We are now going to be entering into an area that has taken over an awful lot of security talk in the last, well, we'll say 12 to 24 months, which is so-called next generation security again. And I don't know how many next generations we have had, but we're going to be talking about AI in security. And I don't know how many people over here saw this, but in the United States back in the 1950s, there was a TV show called The Twilight Zone. And this was one of them. It was basically aliens coming on down to Earth, and they're going to help us. And then they provide all the manuals that we need. And at the end, it's a cookbook for humanity. So we're entering into the world of AI more than ever before. So today we're going to be talking about this, and this is a discussion that you are going to be a part of, because I'm going to guide these two gentlemen, who I will introduce in a moment, in order to get not only our views, but your views of what is going on and what will be going on in the coming foreseeable future, shall we say. We're used to talking about drones. We've had that talk earlier by, I believe it was Dominic this morning. I know that in California, they are now delivering marijuana by drones, and that is whether it's a setback or a good thing has yet to be determined. When we're getting into the cyberkinetic issues of automation in on-the-road vehicles, and we've had a couple of very bad incidents over the last year. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? We think we know what we're doing. Some people think that they know what they're doing. But at the heart of everything in AI, there are always problems. And one of the problems is something some of you may be familiar with, and it is called, where's the wine? Carolyn? Anybody? Somebody's going to bring wine up soon for the gentleman. And it is called trolleyological conundrum. Is everybody familiar with the trolley problem? Okay. Fundamentally, you have a choice. You take an action in order to kill one person in order to save 5. If you take no action at all, 5 people die. And that is the fundamental concept of the trolley problem. Or do you, as a passerby on a nearby bridge, throw a guy over the bridge then in order to save 6 people? Is there a correct answer? So, in the simplest form, you have a choice. Who dies? The man or the woman? In this case, the white gentleman or the man of color? Or what if the person making the choice is doesn't really like people of color? Is there going to be a predictable different answer? Are a few little kids worth more than an older lady? And in certain cultures, certain people have more inherent value, but does that translate into what we're doing with AI and how we're going to be approaching it from a security standpoint? Again, different cultures, different standards, and as we'll be talking more and more, different kinds of biases. And at the heart of AI or machine learning or deep learning or whatever term you're going to be using, bias is still at the heart of this. And it's a matter ultimately of trust. Then we can take the concept that was laid out by Asimov back 50 years ago, the 3 fundamental rules of robots. And the rule fundamentally says a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Is this or is this not the Kobayashi Maru facing AI and us handing control of decision making to certain kinds of processes. This is the city in which I live, and this is a very, very pretty picture of it, and that's great. But when looked at through an AI machine, that's what it sees. Is that the same kind of representation that a human would have in the same way that humans would potentially react? And to my wife's chagrin, I use this picture of her being put through deep thought, and it was the same picture running through the same algorithm in a matter of a 2-minute difference. So we're going to be discussing all of these aspects, but most importantly, how do they affect security of all of the issues that we face, from the drones and the autonomous cyberkinetic vehicles into the decision-making at the SIM, IDS, IPS, and some of these levels that we'll be getting into some details on. And I really want and encourage your participation and questions, because there are more questions than there are answers today. Caroline, any chance of getting these gentlemen their alcohol? They are in desperate need of alcohol because I am still talking. The two gentlemen up here, on my left is Michael Masucci. On my other left is Greg Carpenter. And in order to get this started, I'd like them to each introduce themselves, speak for a couple minutes. And we do have an assassin in the room. The assassin is Tony down here at the bottom, and he is authorized to shoot either one or both of the debaters if they say something stupid or take too long in their answer. As the audience, you are also encouraged to yell, "Tony, shoot." Tony, where are you? So with that, Michael, why don't you give us a little background on yourself and how you fit into this question of why we're talking about AI and the information security field and where you came from.
Well, in a lot of ways, I'm probably the least likely person to be on this stage, but that's a very good reason for me being here. As an end user, as somebody who reads the popular culture discourse about AI, I have all kinds of expectations, all kinds of assumptions, all kinds of things that I do get already, will get next year, and will get in the foreseeable future. And probably most, if not all, of what I think is wrong. One of the difficulties of everything we're talking about at this conference is that on the underlying principle of it all, it's all about human culture. Drones chasing animals to terrify them is a human cultural phenomena far more than a technological analog. Every aspect of, oh, now we're talking. And no guns yet, guys. Every aspect of the phenomena that's going around the world with not being able to trust news stories, not knowing what are verifiable sources, and the oldest problem, not knowing whether the sales rep you're talking to is pulling your leg, affects the end user as much as the expert class. And because of that, a true, detailed, ongoing dialogue between the programming class and the people out there using what you geniuses create is vital. I'm a media maker. I use computers all my life. I don't have the slightest idea how they work. And that's why, in many ways, what I think matters as much as an expert like Greg. Greg?
Greg Carpenter.
Hey,
A little about yourself and why the hell you are here.
I don't know why I'm here either. I'm not an expert.
That was
Shoot,
a bad
Tony,
mic
shoot.
drop.
Watch out, the mic's behind you too. I've come here to talk a little bit about AI I have experience with it. I work with nanorobotics, nanotechnology that
Mic closer to
depends on AI.
Mic closer.
Yes, sir. That depends on AI in many instances. AI represents the best and the worst of what we have as people. AI is built off of the genius, the intellect, the skills, and the talent of many smart people, people out here like you. But it also represents the laziness, the lethargy. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Siri, Google something for me. I'm too tired to sit up out of bed to Google something. Really? We've gotten to a crossroads where we can either take AI and move it forward in a most beneficial and completely supportive way of humanity, or we can end up in like that Pixar movie. What was that? Where the robots are just driving around doing everything and people are sitting around and watching TV and sucking down food all day long and not doing a doggone thing. We have an option. We can be engaged, we can help lead, we can guide, and we can set up requirements and framework for what we're going to do with this new technology. And it is just another technology. 100 years ago, I could have said, it's cars, it's just another technology. And people would be running around with their hair on fire. What are we going to do with this thing? This thing is it's a mess. It's going to destroy humanity. Today, we're doing the same thing. We're saying, oh, AI is going to destroy humanity. It's not going to destroy humanity. We're still here, 6, 7, 10,000, 5 million. I don't know how many years we've been here, but we've been here for a while. And AI is certainly not going to be the end of us. It's an enhancer, it's a tool that we use correctly, and it'll take us a long way.
And that brings us to an initial question that I want to begin framing. Because we have so little knowledge, I have a new book coming out, please buy lots of them. And one of the quotes that I use in that book is about AI and security. And it says, we speak some unknown language that even we don't understand. We cannot predict our behavior, and we have no idea how we come to the conclusions we do. And that is the current state of AI. So with that in mind, I want to pose an initial question to both of our debaters, and then let's start getting you guys involved. Otherwise, I have lots of questions. Is AI merely a religion in which we have to choose to have faith or not? Mike?
When you were reading that quote, it reminded me of a project in New York City called Deep Patient at the City University of New York's Mount Sinai College of Medicine and Hospital. They've been utilizing artificial intelligence, which, by the way, is a term that I think is terrible. It's not artificial intelligence. It's mediated adaptation. It's programmed adaptability. It's machine learning. But anyway, the term that stuck, the term the salesmen are selling you, is artificial intelligence. But what Mount Sinai found out is that, to echo what Wynn said, is that something they cannot explain has happened. Deep Patient was able to, far beyond statistical norm, analyze and predict onslaught of schizophrenia, which the professional licensed psychiatric community wholly admits they are unable to do. And there is no clear explanation at the moment as to why that is. Livia Poliani, now retired from Stanford, who was a chief researcher at Microsoft, was a linguist by training. Her doctorate is in linguistics, and she, decades ago, asked the question, How do we perceive? How do we differentiate? What is pattern learning? And that nodal philosophy seeded and helped seed artificial intelligence. You as coders, you as programmers, you as information scientists have as much resource material to grasp from the social sciences as you have from mathematics. And a lot of artificial intelligence at its core comes from a philosophical framework, the notion of how do we perceive? How do I differentiate, Greg, from all of this other stuff coming at me? We simply don't know. Those people who call we are at the phase AI 3.0, we are at a phase where artificial intelligence is self-learning, which is, again, is simply trial and error, test and retest. That works, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work, that worked, we'll go that direction. That's what learning is on a machine level. Until we can get to the point where we understand what is really the interface between the human experience and the machine experience, many of the questions we're going to be asked are not fully answerable. That's fascinating, guys, because that means the younger of you in this room have a lifetime of discovery ahead of you. Those of you at the beginning of your careers are going to see a world as different when you are my age as the world was when I was your age. And if you can imagine how different that was, it was a world where no one was predicting we were going to have personal computers. No one, the best minds in the world. IBM president saying, well, maybe the world needs about a dozen computers. That world, the world you take for granted, was never predicted. Now that we are mediated with this incredible computational power, none of us with a straight face can tell you where we are going.
Greg, can we take AI on faith as a religion that belongs in the enterprise?
Everyone out here appears to be younger than Win. So back when Win graduated college, and I'll go back to the cars again, cars were just coming out.
I never graduated from college.
Play along.
Oh, sorry. It was a good college. It was the best college.
So Win graduated from college, cars were just coming out. Did we accept the fact that cars were good for us? Or did we just reject them outright? Back in the 1840s, 50s, 60s, were trains considered naturally good? Did we accept those as the new technology, the new innovation of our time? That was something that we definitely had to accept on faith that they were going to work. They were going to take us from place to place. It was the best thing in the world. This is a little different. This is something you can't necessarily see, put your hand on. You can't touch it, but it's still there. Like Mike said, with machine learning embedded into AI, it does get smarter, and it gets smarter all the time. There's a point now, and I don't know when we pass that point, but AI can think in many ways better than we can. It can come up with solutions faster than we can. There is at Walter Reed Army Medical College Hospital in Washington, D.C. There's an artificial foot that was made. And they embedded AI algorithms. The ankle and foot now know the difference between flat terrain, rugged terrain, undulating terrain, and adapts to give the least amount of shock and pressure on the knee and hip, maintaining alignment in the back. This is a great and wonderful thing. It knows what type of terrain it's dealing with. It knows if it's blacktop, it knows if it's sand. Do we take it for granted it's going to work every time? I don't think we're there yet. I think we have to really sit down and be engaged in the process And again, take all you young folks out there under than, 75? Everyone younger than 75 who's going to be involved with this, you're going to be leaders in the industry with machine learning and AI in one form or another. You may not realize it yet, but this is your niche. This is the time that we're living in right now. And I think that it's going to be your message to go forward as you develop and as people are developing right now to make it clear what the problems are with AI and what the solutions are with AI and what the limitations are with AI. It can't do everything. It's not going to do everything, and it's not going to be that AI can do everything in the next 20 years or 30 years. We're not looking at that type of a scenario. If you believe that, then you believe in a dystopian future. AI has a limit to what it can do right now. We have to understand the dynamics of what those things are and what the limitations are, and those are the things that I think we can believe in right now.
Which brings up then an obvious question, and this is aimed initially at you, Greg. All right, we have a lot to learn about AI. We know very little. We do know that it took less than 24 hours for a Microsoft AI system through a positive feedback loop, which is how AI systems actually learn, to turn into a racist. And that was deployed to tens, if not hundreds of millions of people. How do we propose to begin to understand something that has no deterministic model? We do not know a 0 and a 1, the output from an AI, as to how we even got there. How do we get at least to the next step of understanding it so it would make sense in the enterprise?
That would be the weakest point in computer network defense, which is the person. The ethics of artificial intelligence have robotic ethics and machine ethics. Roboethics is the aspect of taking the people that program the AI, addressing them, knowing who they are, understanding what their personal biases are, and mediating those biases before it gets into the code in AI. Machine ethics is rogue AI, where AI just goes off and decides that if you are a 5'6", 30-year-old guy from China, which is the most common demographic in the world, okay, there's too many of you. And there needs to be some type of a kinetic response to bring that back into the norm. Machine just off the reservation. The biggest bang for the buck is in bioethics up front, roboethics up front. Getting with the people that are actually writing the code, making the machines do what they need to be doing in an unbiased and in an unfiltered type of a way, knowing what's there, knowing that you can go in and you can inspect what they have. You can see what they're doing. Nothing is hidden from anybody else. And that would be the third aspect of what I think is important about this, is making sure that everything that goes into AI is transparent. That not only this group of developers over here can see what's going on, but these folks over here can see what's going on, and they know what's going into the code. And these guys over here, they know what's going into the code together. It's not just one group. It's a big, kind of like a Linux community. It would be an open source type of a community, I think, that would be the best type of an approach in order to minimize those types of issues.
Mike?
And remember that morality is absolutely culture bound and subjective. Every one of us walked underneath a bas-relief mural, gold, portrait of Lavoisier, homage to chemistry, and for some explicable in the 21st century world, a nude woman. a totally normal thing to have rendered in an image at the time of its creation. This beautiful city, this magnificent city, is filled with images of people that in other parts of the world they would deem offensive, outrageous, and unacceptable. We all are bound. Mathematicians are bound by a morality. When they write code, there is an intrinsic philosophy they are putting in, whether conscious or unconscious. Every aspect of everything we do, including the scientific class, is bound, mitigated, and barriered by various levels of moral codes. The questions you ask are important yet subjective. Computers will only mimic our moralities. Will they ultimately, in some far distant future, create their own? I don't know. I'm an agnostic about this stuff. I don't claim to know where it's going. I only know that today they mimic. They mimic what you teach them. It does what you direct them. It is intelligent only inasmuch as it reacts to stimulus and responds according to a number of paths you wrote. So any morality or lack thereof is in the hands of its authors. And for the foreseeable future, we don't claim to know at what point in some future it wakes. And humanity as we know it changes forever. Kurzweil says 2040. I'm old enough to have spent my life not seeing predictions happen. I'm still waiting for my flying car. I'm still waiting for the hotel room on the moon. Things that as a kid were just no-brainers, they're going to happen in the next few decades, never happened, where all bunches of other things that no one ever expected did. So where this is going, we don't know, but today, computers are neither moral nor immoral. They simply are reacting to what you tell them.
In an enterprise, whether it's a large corporation, whether it's critical infrastructure, whether it's your home network or your home IoT system that you've got going, what currently of any of those systems would you be comfortable handing over control to an AI?
I don't think you can, because an AI is still tremendously dependent on you paying the electricity bill. AI is still tremendously dependent on you making sure its mainframes are in climate-controlled settings. At the moment, AI is nowhere near taking control of anything. Can you automate a number of functions? Of course. And that's been going on for a long time. Even pre-digitally, things have been automated. So these are highly complex systems that can be predictive, predicting whether you're going to cheat on your taxes, predicting on whether you're going to get type 2 diabetes, predicting on whether climate change is going to impact the coasts near you. It can do that. You could too. It would just take a lot more time and blackboard space. But it can do it at a much faster rate, but it cannot take over yet anything. It simply is still a highly, beautifully designed, wonderful creation at your disposal. I can't promise that will always be the case, but it probably will for most of the remainder of my life, if not all of it.
Greg.
My wife and I just picked up a car for her a few weeks ago. We got her a new car. I don't like her driving around in old stuff like the stuff I drive. And we found that there was a AI component to this vehicle. Shock and awe. Wait, you don't pay your taxes? Oh, okay. I didn't want to be the only one. So we found out that there was AI embedded in the car. If you go over the line, it'll adjust the car back over and bring you back into your lane if you're falling asleep or, passed out in the driver's seat, something like that. It'll slow down if you get close to another vehicle. It's not good enough to follow behind a vehicle that jumps out of the way just before you see another vehicle stopped in front of it. It'll crash into that. So it's not quite ready to drive me around somewhere by itself, but it's come a long ways. It'll let me know if I get too close to another car, if another car gets too close to me. We're all familiar with this stuff. I was excited. I thought it was great. She thought it was great. But to allow AI to actually be in charge of something in my house, I would say, other than my electric stapler, I'm not really sure that I want it to do that yet. I'm not ready to hand over control. I still believe that I can make better decisions than the AI system that might be put in. I'm still just that pompous. I think I'm better than the AI still. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't know, but I'm comfortable with that. And I'm sure that many people out here are comfortable with that too. It's not like launching a botnet. You know what it's going to go out and do. You've programmed it a certain way. It's going to have a definitive behavior, how it's going to operate. Here, we don't see the results of what happens on a regular basis with AI. There's not terribly a lot of research that's come out to the community yet. Is there some? Yes, there's some, but there's not a ton yet. And until we reach a certain threshold as humans, we're not going to accept the fact that this technology is credible or safe for us to use in a personal type of a way.
And remember, guys, we are all, every one of you, no matter how expert you are, we are all subjects to spin. We are all subjects to hype. We are all subjects to exaggeration. There is a lot of talk in the popular press about how advanced these tools are. In one interpretation, that's true, but in others, not so much. Example, Yan LeCun, who's the director of research for artificial intelligence at Facebook, has been quoted, and let's assume it's not fake news in his quote, that he does believe that AI is going to have emotions, and that when it does, they will be the same emotions as ours. But let's think about it. Why would a machine need to be jealous? What is it jealous of? Is someone going to steal its mate? Is someone going to take its cookies? Why would that emotion need to be in the toolkit of a machine? Why would all kinds of adaptations that we as primates needed to do to unfortunately beat out the competing primate, either within our own tribe or in an adjoining tribe, why would machines need the adaptations we have? So a lot of the hype, a lot of the personalization, a lot of the risk theory, even someone like Elon Musk, highly skeptical about where this is going. The late Stephen Hawking's very, very nervous about where this is going. Maybe they're right, but I don't see why computers are going to want to hurt you. Maybe in, again, some far distant future, a point where we are no longer human the way we are today, where we have become more cybernetic than biological. Maybe we will have this discussion. But for the foreseeable future, when it is as simple for you to turn off the machine, many of the dystopian, sci-fi extremist views are simply nonsensical. They simply don't make sense, whereas you have at your disposal a toolkit that can work wonders in medicine, in finance, in ecological, and all kinds of scientific domains, and yes, even in the arts. Just to finish my one thought. I know I was long on this one. A couple of days ago, I was at the Pompidou Museum, and they just finished having a show called Code Le Monde, a survey of early computer art. And the person I was with says, well, do you think computers can make art? And I said, absolutely. That's not the question. The question is whether they can make great art. They absolutely can do imaging. They absolutely can manipulate what we give them. They absolutely can work within the parameters of what we tell them. But will they write Shakespeare? No time soon. No time soon.
Artificial intelligence has already gone a little bit too far in certain areas as far as I'm concerned. There is a brothel in Germany that is composed of all sex robots. You might have heard of this. And if you have, well, you know what? Don't worry about it. All of the sex robots there in this brothel are designed with AI. And the AI is to emotionally connect them to you. They're designed to draw closer emotionally to you, to feed off of your advances, your leads, your wants, needs, desires, as told, as shown, or as shared with them. This is not the only location. They just opened a few locations in the UK recently. And in Germany, they have the pole dancing robots that are specifically making more money than the women who do the regular pole dancing because of the AI. They've learned to key in on certain people in the audience and can identify which ones are going to give them more money. I don't know if they have emotion. I don't know if that's a reality yet. I do know that they can be taught to understand our emotions and to read us and to know who we are better than we know ourselves.
Keep in mind, if you guys have questions or comments, please do raise your hands, wave them fluently so I can pick them up. One of the projects that DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, initiated a number of years ago in the US was to see what an AI attack computer would look like. And after all of their own research, they brought it to DEF CON. And they had guards on it with shoot-to-kill orders if any of us got too close to it, for fear, and this was a DARPA-mandated fear, that it might touch the internet. Yet, in the wild right now, I can lease AI from AWS. I can launch AI-style attacks from anywhere in the world using traditional obfuscation, traceroute methods, etc. If the AI world begins attacking with humans behind it, what do we do, Greg?
I think what we need to do is to first understand. We've got to understand what we're looking at, just like any adversary you might have out there, just like any other computer attack, albeit an advanced one, a fast learning one, and one that's much more challenging than ever seen before. I have people tell me of all these dystopic futures of AI running and programming everything and destroying everything and morally being better than people and identifying people as a threat to their morality and thereby having to have them removed. There was one instance of AI talking to an interviewer, a psychologist, and saying that, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. I'll put you in a people's zoo, and there I can feed you and take care of you as you need to be taken care of because you're an animal. if we're faced with a situation where we have to address an AI threat, I think it would be only realistic or prudent of us to ensure a couple things. Number one is we have an AI answer, a machine learning answer to something like that. Not just one government or two governments. This is something that, again, going back to the Linux concept, the open framework of sharing information and having information out there, you can come up with a solution that's going to address something like that. On the other hand, you can just use kinetic if you can find it, or pull the plug. But I don't know how that would work too well. I think understanding the people behind AI still at this point is the key. The people with their own personal biases, their conjecture, their concept of morality, what's right and what's wrong, all of those subjective things will give you more of a clue or more of an idea as far as what the AI is out to do and how it's going to perform in any situation.
Because things like Project Maven, one of at least the US government's defense AI programs, is classified, we don't know what it can and can't do. Not being ridiculously a skeptic, I do have a tinge of it. I always assume there's quite a bit of spin and disinformation and hyperbole in the assessments, or at least statements about capabilities when it deals with military. We are in a lukewarm war now, or a not-so-cold war now, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm sure the PR departments of our esteemed military are saying things that may not always be very true. Yes, we have a half a dozen AI robots that can walk around like a very crude version of Terminator with a M16 for an arm. Yeah, and it can be destroyed very quickly with a bazooka. We have things that I don't believe are that qualitatively different from traditional military capabilities that they are going to change the game now. Again, who knows what the far future is. But at the moment, it's like a laughable thought. I saw the latest incarnation of Jurassic Park, Jurassic World. And I'm not going to give away the story, but they're stealing the dinosaurs to sell them to governments to be used as military weapons. Now, I don't know about you. A Stegosaurus would probably do a lot of harm to me, but probably not a lot of harm to a tank. So a lot of traditional hardware still will be highly, highly effective tools. I suspect a lot of the AI stuff when it comes to the military is hype.
Any comments? Any questions at this point? Daryl, shout it out. Do we have a microphone for him? Because even I can barely hear him. And he has a loud voice. Thank you.
I just wanted to step back to a question you had asked earlier in reference to where would you feel comfortable turning AI over to your house or anything that you may have. Now I kind of question your answers because just like me, you're not young, and I think in the younger generations that may be different. And I propose the question, would you get on an airplane fully automated with no pilots if you could fly to Paris from the US for $100? Does that change your opinion of AI control?
Who's doing the takeoff and landing would be my first question, not the
AI.
Well,
autonomous, internal AI
well,
control.
ask the audience the question. How many of you would fly on an airplane from Paris to the East Coast of the United States on a no-pilot plane? You're younger than me then, Mike. I think the generational difference is something you just pointed out, Daryl. I don't think I would.
So how many people right now in the audience here know that 98% of the landings from all commercial aircraft are done autonomously without a pilot? Less than one quarter. Yeah.
So is that a question, a point?
Kind of both. I mean, everyone up there was pretty much, no, I wouldn't turn AI to something over my house. But there's always a price point. I just want to point
Right.
that out. Do
But-
you
Yeah,
have a
and that's
price-
Darryl.
absolutely right.
So Darryl, I have no problem with a lot of automation. An automated sprinkler system, it's been going on for a long time with a little first mechanical timer, now a little digital timer. No problem with automation. But the notion of control, the great thing about automation up to this point is I can turn it off. I can just turn off the switch, unplug it. The notion of taking that power from me, I don't think is a generational thing. I don't know that humans are ready to relinquish control. They may be inherently lazy like I am and perfectly willing to let mundane tasks that they hate be done by an automated lawnmower, by automate everything, but don't relinquish control. That word for me still is scary.
And to comment on that, right now, Germany and the EU, Germany's taking the lead on this, is proposing legislation for some time this year that unless the AI vendors of whatever technology is being used for whatever application is being used, unless they can explain the decision-making process, the products will not be allowed to be sold in the EU. How do we deal with something like that when we don't know? I mean, is this a legal issue at this point? Because under that framework, you guys ain't getting to the U.S. for $100.
That's interesting because it is a legal issue, as a matter of fact. I think I'd asked our lawyer, is it a legal issue?
It is a legal issue.
There you go. So I would say absolutely yes, as a matter of fact. No, yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a lot more at play. I think there's many more factors involved.
Jump in.
Thank you. I will take a few minutes to explain my situation. I work in defensive security, and I had no idea about AI or what is it about. I just came in out of sheer curiosity, and now I think I can delve into it a little bit more. Now, listening to you, learned gentlemen, as a novice myself, I'm beginning to wonder. You say AI. How do I prevent the bastardization of AI? And by bastardization, I mean, why is it not pure AI? Like, we are feeding the information to AI to make it what it is. How can we develop an intelligence from its own source? I'm not saying we become gods, but is it even possible to do that? Or, like, for example, a couple of moments ago when you gave that Microsoft AI, which turned into a Nazi, who was racist. I don't remember her name. But it was us feeding us the information. How do we develop a pure AI from its own source?
Well, in the case of the
This picture
racism,
shows the example as well. That was done within a minute of each other
in
into
the case
the same
of
algorithm.
the racism thing, what happens is that it's not a self-generating thing. The algorithm sourced the web. It sourced social media. It learned from social media.
It's called a training data set.
And since it can evolve quicker than I can, as Win said, I don't remember how many hours it was, but let's say a day, whatever it was. Certainly by the next day, it had become suspicious, and I'm just going to say it, of people that look like you. It learned from it learned from humans. It became a racist because humans were racists.
Well,
It didn't
Oh,
become,
boy.
so it became racist because we have data. And I'll make a very simple statement. And some people might get upset, you might not get upset. 98.5% of the people that live in Paraguay are homogenous. They come from the same race, the same intermixing, the same religion. They fall into a group that is roughly the same height, just like 96% of the people in Japan, just like 94.5% of the people in China. We teach AI that it's okay to have a homogeneous society on one hand, and on the other hand, we teach AI that diversity is what we're looking for. We don't know what to tell AI in many cases. That's just one example.
And
And-
unfortunately, what I think is there are going to be multiple scenarios just like there are among humans. So just like there are diverse people who celebrate the world's culture, celebrate diversity, and then there are not so nice people who don't, they will both have access to these tools. So there will be algorithms that have embedded in them biases. When Wynn began, he began with the notion, in a strange way, this talk, and yes, this is about security if you don't see that, because the security of our systems is dependent on our cultures getting along more than anything else, more than economics, more than anything else. So there will be some people that are racists, and their computers are likely to, initially at least, also be.
and you use, I want to, all right, well, this is where I'm going to address this. The word pure AI is, no offense, pretty meaningless. At RSA this last year, there were roughly 400 booths that claimed to use AI to solve all my security problems. There are also roughly 400 different fundamental styles of AI, machine learning, deep learning algorithms that can either be used alone or in combination with others that create an exponential combination of possibilities of what the engine actually does. Part one. Part two is, once you've got this engine and you think you got a cool algorithm, you then have to train it. And you need to train it with a data set. Any data set, as he is pointing out, is going to have an internal natural bias. Pro people of color, pro white people, whatever we're looking at, and that can be words, it can be images, it can be anything on the internet, and there's a couple of interesting applications there. So for the concept of looking for pure AI, I don't believe anybody has ever suggested that such a thing is even possible. We had a gentleman in the back before you, Mark.
Hi. Thank you for your conference. I'm very skeptic on your threat model. What I mean is that for this talk, you began by talking about very, sorry to say the word, but basic stuff like self-driving cars, self-automation at home, planes, even planes. I mean, from a technical standpoint, it's very simple AI. And after that, you went to cyber warfare and military AI and attack AI. But I mean, these are the both end of the spectrum. I mean, most AI right now is used on financial databases, on medical decision, on assurance companies. I mean, isn't the real threat on these problems. I mean, for example, you said there is racist AI because humans are racist. But I mean, by definition, AI is based on correlation. And if we, for example, try to optimize a cost with an AI, it's going to optimize it based on correlation. And if it takes the decision that it's not worth saving old people because they are not financially worth it, well, it's going to do it because from a correlation standpoint, it's true. From a very basic, low level, without any other consideration standpoint, it's true. So how do we deal with it?
We go with the lawyer on this one.
We already have an answer on how to deal with this. You're the moderator.
Go.
You moderate.
All right.
So from a medical side, I'm finishing my PhD in epidemiology right now. And, so I work a lot of medical issues. And one of the things that we noticed that AI is used a lot in medical fields, specifically in things like insulin pumps, pacemakers, in order to optimize the care that someone is given right now. So it's not necessarily always in the financial sector. Yeah, the financial guy, if he was around, I'd see if he wanted to invest some more money in us. But it's used in several other areas. In defense, it's used a lot in defense. I'll tell you, just because Wynn mentioned the DARPA project, there's several other military projects that use a lot of AI. But the medical field, we've been seeing a lot of this, especially in analysis of brain waves and brain function in order to identify, address, and mitigate different types of mental health issues. It can identify if there's too much enzyme, if the blood-brain barrier stays open too long in a way to allow certain viruses in, and it can also help to give medication or identify the timing that's needed to distribute medication in a way that will keep somebody alive and do better for them. And I'll let Mike answer the legal aspect of that.
One of the most serious problems with the legal world is it's jurisdictional. And by that it means it only goes from this place to this place, and then suddenly there's a whole different set of laws. Like Wynn showed earlier, a drone delivering marijuana in California. As of the 1st of this year, marijuana is completely legal in California. I don't know, is it legal in France? No. So that's the problem with the legal system, is that you have 100 different sets of laws, but you have a technology that is by its core universal. And so if something is illegal here, well, they'll just fly to the Cayman Islands where it will be legal. Or they'll fly to Moscow, or they'll fly to Sri Lanka. They'll make it work because they will find the jurisdiction whose legal sets fits their morality and their ethics. So when we come to all the legal systems, we have a real problem with technology. Because the amazing thing about a networked world is it is a networked world, but divided up by a bunch of conflicting, contradictory laws, where in some countries the age of consent is 18, and in another country it's 13, and in another country it's 10. So what should be the moral parameters about sex bots and about sexuality using AI? Well, it depends on where you are. It's a very complicated issue that technologists, I find, don't talk enough about because they understand their work will work everywhere. Yeah, but the laws won't. So we have to permeate all of our discussions as much as possible in a multidisciplinary way, because we're always dealing with multidisciplinary answers to every problem.
And we deal with that now in many other disciplines, not just AI or IT or something like that. This happens in many disciplines. And I'll just go back to the medical discipline just for a moment. In the States, we have many doctors that fly down to the Caribbean. Why? Because they can perform surgeries in the Caribbean. They can do things there where the medical system in the United States won't allow it. Many doctors from Cuba who get paid $400 a month to be a doctor, they'll go to Ecuador where they can make 4 times as much. That's still not as much as my son makes in a part-time job in the States, but it's 4 times more than he's now, more than he's getting now in Cuba. And the standard of living is incredibly magnificent. He gets a refrigerator. So people will go to where the laws allow them to do things. It's happened throughout history.
Mark, you had a question, or undoubtedly a comment coming.
Kind of a mixture of the two. So earlier you alluded that the AI is learning from us, and some of these things, for instance, the Taybot that turned out to be a racist in 24 hours, learnt it from us. And, we have this reluctance to abandon certain AI models or algorithmic models that are in use in production. And I argue, or I claim, to say that basically we are not getting rid of these models, which are bad models, we know they're bad models, because we put the money into them. Are we saying that AI is mysterious, is unknowable, because we're just not wanting to ask the uncomfortable and maybe kind of awkward questions about ourselves?
So I think there's more, as Michael was saying earlier, there's more hype to AI because of the potential dystopic outcome that is relevant to many people. Many people read science fiction. They see, just like Wynn had the slide up about the movie, about the Twilight Zone episode. People fear the unknown. Psychologically, they always fear the unknown. Kids have nightmares. Adults have nightmares. But something like this, which can potentially lead to the what's called the gray goo concept, where you have AI running nanotechnology that just is a self-replicating machine that completely destroys humans. Once this idea came out years ago, people became frightened of AI. Instead of embracing it, learning about it, understanding what the truth is, and running away from all the conjecture, people chose the other route. And most people became afraid of AI. And I think it plays back a lot to a human nature where people like to be scared sometimes.
And I think it speaks to our need as humans for storytelling. Scientists want to embrace the objective. That's a very difficult thing. Artists have abandoned that a long time ago. They know they can't do it if anyone can do it. They know that's not going to happen. But they also found that a good story is a story with conflict. So science fiction is about science going wrong. Now, let's face it, far more often than not, science has not gone wrong. But if you're doing a science fiction movie about biological stuff, something's going to go wrong, the vial is going to break, the virus is going to spread and kill half the world, and they're going to turn into zombies. It's what I call the Frankenstein syndrome. Science fiction is built on the premise that science goes wrong, that there's some fatal human flaw, that the hubris of the creative is such that invariably they're going to miss some simple variable and create a monster instead of creating an intelligent vacuum cleaner. But I think it is natural, and the younger people in the room are going to confront the reality that you will constantly be challenged by popular culture that you're making a monster when you're just making a better vacuum cleaner, or you're just making better security protocols. Will they ever be perfect? No. Will there always be someone who will figure out how to hack them? Yes. Will you always be playing leapfrog with the bad actors? Of course. But they're not going to take over the world unless we give it to them. And that isn't even an option for many, many, many decades, if ever.
You brought up a couple of words that I've been making notes on hither and yon, and then glued them together. And you just used talking about stories, talked about conflict, and another word for conflict is adversarialism. Now, one of the ways that AIs learn how to play games is to take an AI, give it some set of rules, clone it, and press a button and say go, and wait a couple weeks, and suddenly you got two really, really smart Go or chess playing entities, for lack of any other word. You also mentioned earlier the concept of fake news, and that Facebook has an AI expert, and Google's got theirs, and everybody's got their own particular approaches and theories that are not the pure approaches the gentleman was talking earlier, because I don't believe that exists, and I don't believe the community believes it exists. Then we add in something that just started appearing, we heard in the last 90, 120 days, is that AI has gotten so good, you can very, very soon completely simulate anybody's voice and video characteristics. So AI is now, I would call that an offensive capability, given a fake news style environment, with Facebook now on the complete defensive, because they have said they're going to be using AI to filter out fake news. Isn't what you just said of us giving control over, isn't that exactly 120 days or 3 years away, not 30 decades?
I don't know. I don't know, and I don't believe anyone does. What I understand as an end user, and as by an end user I mean someone who has a room full of powerful computers all doing all kinds of stuff, I don't see that there's anything they can do anytime soon without me. And that's not vanity, it's reality. They are still humble servants waiting to be told. Are they better and better at things every, not year, but every month? Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. But they are so far away from being a human being. Can we simulate propaganda in a way that will be very difficult for 99.9% of the world to distinguish? Yes. But it will still be authored by a human being. That 0.1% of the people will simply look at the source code and will immediately be able to know whether it was authored in 4K video or whether it was created with an advanced 3D program like Max or Maya. But will the person inclined to believe what this propaganda is saying believe, yes, that is Obama saying he's a Muslim? Yeah, they will believe that because they want to believe that. But will any serious technologist be able to say, no, that's a really nicely rendered 3D model? Yes. But just like there is so much fake photography being circulated around already. A few years back at one of your conferences when I showed a picture that was being circulated that claimed that the atrocities being done with ISIS beheadings were faked, and there was this photograph which was terrible Photoshop of, the beheading taking place in this studio, and I pointed out the light stand that they stuck in was somehow defying gravity because it wasn't really sitting on the ground, and the light sources were coming from every possible place. It was a terrible job at Photoshop that anyone who knows image making would know in a second was fake. But are there thousands, if not millions of people out there predisposed to believe this is true, who believe it's true? Unfortunately, yes. And that's relatively crude compared to what you're talking about.
It's about psychology. Okay, got a lot of hackers in here. how many hackers, just show of hands, have identified the perfect spoof that can never be discredited? Perfect spoof, anybody? One hand. I want to see one hand. I'm American, I'll take one finger. No, okay. Right. It doesn't happen. When you get to something like that, where you believe that you can perfectly spoof 100% of the population, it goes back to an individual's belief and value system. Beliefs and values are very difficult to change. If people want to believe it, like Mike said, they're gonna believe it. There's nothing you can do to change their mind to make them not believe it. If they want to believe that something means something that it doesn't, in common conversation, there's nothing you can do that's going to change their interpretation of the data. You have to work within the environment and understand that there are so many people of diverse background, diverse cultures, and different values and belief systems that don't exactly match yours, which is about 100% of the people in the world.
So when we have 400 vendors claiming that their AI for IDS, IPS, AV, all of the detection space in the world and reaction space in the world that they have in this next generation, how do we make any sensible decision as to how real, how efficacious, what is really going on? How do people and companies and advisors to management make that decision?
I would say just your basic testing, your security testing, your validation testing, your integration testing, all those types of things. And you have to look at the facts. You have to look at the code, do static analysis, do dynamic analysis. Is it doing what it said it's going to do? Is it going through something else? Is it turning out a completely ridiculous answer that goes through another process or another app that comes out to be the right answer?
So but what I'm hearing you say is that we need people with the AI skills and sophistication that you're talking about now sitting around the enterprise.
You do need that, but you just need people that can test software and test hardware in an unbiased environment, in a sterile lab. That's what you really need. Just like any other technology that's come out over the last 10, 15, 20 years or so. Machine learning. You need to have people validate machine learning that it actually does what it says it's going to do. It's the same thing with AI. You just can't assume that AI is going to work. Like Furby. How many people have a Furby? I have a Furby. Furby learns, doesn't he? Furby's AI.
I don't know what a Furby is.
You don't know what a Furby is? A little fuzzy little guy?
I'm not part of the younger
Has like
generation.
five
sorry.
little, it has 5 megs of memory.
5 megs.
Yeah.
More than my first 7
It's
computers.
cute.
put
You talk
together.
to it, it would repeat back to you, it would understand, it would be able to translate after a while of you talking to it. It was a cute little fuzzy thing about this tall. And you would say, "Hello, Furby," and it would say blah, 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 like that. And then after about 30 or 40 times, you learn to say, "Hello, Furby," and Furby would say, "Hello," back to you. And then you would keep working with Furby until Furby could learn how to speak in an intelligible way to you. So we've had artificial intelligence for years. Any government, any military has had AI for years. You just don't know about it. That's the thing that's going on. It's been around for a long time. I don't see any problem.
I really think it's the kick the tires thing. Those of you that work for private companies, understandably, and of course, you have a marketing team. Maybe some of you are in that marketing team. You, of course, it is your responsibility to put your product's best light forward. It's a cliche, but sometimes cliches hold true, that salespeople may sometimes exaggerate a little bit. It's about critical thinking.
Trust me, I'm your salesman.
It's critical thinking. Don't be a complete turnoff. I don't believe anything you say, but don't just believe anything they say either. There are ways to verify whether the tools you are purchasing will work in the systems you are using. Now, they may actually work really well in the system you're using and not so well in the system the other person's using. You only care about the system you're using. So whatever best practices, whatever tests and measurements you normally do for anything else you buy to determine, yeah, we're going to write the check for that, is still the case. It is ultimately still a product package. It is ultimately still a software package. You are adding to a plethora of packages you already exist, some of which you may self-author, some of which you may modify, some of which you may just use off the shelf. But no matter what, it's simply still a product that you must verify works for your needs, and not necessarily the Department of Defense, and not necessarily Ford Motor Company's using it really well. Will it work for you?
So how many people use AI in their networks and their systems? Seriously, come on. Okay, 2 people, great.
What do you
Seriously.
what do you use it for, sir? Yeah,
What do
yeah,
you use
yeah,
AI
yeah.
for?
You, the embarrassed one.
Fraud detections, DDoS.
Fraud, DDoS, and currently CRM.
Super, okay, that's great. Now, second question. How many people use AV in their network? Anybody use antivirus? Please. Okay, the same number of people. Great, okay. All right, good. That's a good answer. Okay. So antivirus is what, 30 to 40% effective? Right? So if you purchased a vehicle and you told your boss you would be to work only 3 or 4 days every 2 weeks, would your boss be happy if you didn't, if you weren't working from home or something? Are you really happy with the AV? Less people are using AI. I think we still need to go through proof of concept in many, many different disciplines before AI can be shown to be effective in any way. Look at the picture. These were taken, what, just minutes apart?
Well, about a minute and a half.
About a minute, minute and a half. That makes a difference. Okay. A minute and a half apart, 90 seconds apart, same data set. And you have different answers. What comes out of AI when you put in different data? What comes out of AI when you use it on different networks, in different environments? You don't get the same answer yet. I haven't seen it in the lab. We've used it in the lab a lot, and we haven't seen the same answers yet. I don't think you're going to see any type of congruence with any AI product anytime in the next 10, 15 years or so.
Other comments and questions? All right, well, what we're going to do is start winding down, 'cause I know that people want to get out and get to their evenings here. I'm one of the folks that has a severe amount of question about the true applicability and efficacy of use of AI, and in a deterministic way. And what I mean by that is that AI by itself is inherently probabilistic, with tons of variables that we don't understand how those variables are even affecting the algorithms, and vis-a-vis getting a different output for the same input, yet the only reason there was a difference is a few thousand other people plugged their wife's picture into deep thought and came up with a different answer. I know that I am not particularly comfortable with a technology that is probabilistic, that is attempting to make deterministic answers, especially deterministic answers that are in mission-critical applications, whether it's CI, ICS, SCADA, cars. Where is the drone supposed to crash when it gets out of control? What are the rules? And we don't have these because they are constantly changing updating data sets. So for that reason, I still have the issue, and I think that Greg mentioned it, something about somewhere in the middle there needs to be a human, which is why I'm not getting on that plane with you either. Because when something happens, I want a guy with gray hair who's been there before and knows how. Could a plane have survived? Would the plane in The Hero on the Hudson have survived under pure AI control? Likely not, because he broke all the rules. When you look at what Airbus has programmed in, there were errors on that the Air France flight that came from Sao Paulo. That was AI going, oh shit, sorry. And so I have problems with that. And at the same time, I agree with the concept of benchmark testing. I'm not sure we're there yet. But on that note, I'd like to give our two debaters here a couple minutes to kind of give some roundup thoughts on best approaches for using AI in the world of security, whether it's physical security, human security, or cybersecurity.
As the non-technologist, I would say I know what I want as an end user. I know what product I want from you. I want a system to use in my business that will reasonably, I do not say perfectly, I say reasonably, that will reasonably enhance what I can do today. Today, I can fairly well protect the people that work for me, the people that I work with. I can reasonably protect the equipment that I have, and I can reasonably protect the people that commission us to do what we do. It can always be better. If you can convince me that my security can be better, I'm interested. But if you're just going to tell me that it's going to do a lot of things that I may or may not need, I may start to drift. Security is at the heart of everything. The one thing I haven't heard said today is obviously because you already know it. You are the center of the cyclone. Everything on this planet depends on you guys getting it reasonably right. We are a networked world. All of our economies are networked. All of our industries are networked. And we are all running through the same little pipeline based on 50-year-old code, stuck upon by patches and tweaks. And it's up to you to get it reasonably right most of the time, because if you don't, the whole thing is a house of cards. The economies will collapse, the industries will fail, and we will be in the Middle Ages. So I'm very happy with what you're doing so far. Can things always be better? Of course. That's what the free market is all about, that one of you is going to come up with something better than the rest of you. Great. And we'll all go buy from you. But you've done a remarkably good job so far. AI will make it better, but because you are teaching AI to make it better.
Greg, final thoughts.
I think that was a pretty brilliant wrap-up. The only thing that I'm going to add to that is that AI doesn't exist. AI doesn't get implemented without you. You're the ones that we talked about before. You're the ones that create. You're the ones that do the input into the AI. It is your own personal biases, your cultural backgrounds. It's everything about you that goes into AI today. And AI tomorrow will be your kids. And I think that it's our responsibility as the people who are putting this technology together and creating this technology to take the helm of the ship and make sure that it's not biased, and make sure that it's not racist and scandalous. And it's our job to make sure that everybody else throughout the world will benefit. The Dalai Lama once said, "The greatest thing we can do in this world is to help mankind." And if you can't help mankind, don't hurt it.
On that note, I really want to thank you guys, not only for your participation, but for hanging out late for a topic that is not hacking specifically, but has huge, huge implications into all aspects of our industry and obviously many, many other industries. So I applaud you all for staying and hanging out and listening to some of the spectrum of ideas of where we're going in AI. And thank you for coming to Hack in Paris. And we will see you tomorrow morning again at 9 a.m. Thank you.